The message came to Earth on a cold morning in March. Admiral Park Yuna stood in her office high above the city of Seoul. Watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and gold, she had served in the fleet for 30 years, but she had never seen war. No human had, not since they joined the Galactic Consortium 300 years ago. The galaxy thought humans were weak. They called them the short-lived ones and laughed at their emotional nature. Humans had no seat on the High Council. They were allowed to exist, nothing more. The great species of the galaxy saw them as children playing at civilization. But Yuna knew something the galaxy had forgotten. Humans remembered everything. Every kindness. Every cruelty. They wrote it down in books and carved it into stone. They passed stories from parent to child for thousands of years. This was their gift and their curse. The message on her screen showed images that made her heart go cold. The Valorian homeworld burned. Their colony on the Sara was under attack. The Krath's Dominion, a brutal empire from the outer regions of space, had decided to wipe out the peaceful Valorians. They wanted their worlds. They wanted their resources. And they did not care how many Valorians had to die. Yuna touched her chest where a small pendant hung beneath her uniform. It was old, made of a metal that did not exist on Earth. Her grandmother had given it to her, and her grandmother's grandmother had received it from a Valorian doctor 300 years ago. The Cascade plague had nearly destroyed humanity. 4 billion people lay dying, and no species in the galaxy would help. Humans were too young, too unimportant. The consortium voted to let them die rather than waste resources on a minor species. But one ship came. A single Valorian medical vessel, commanded by a doctor named Ulith, defied her own government. She brought the cure. She saved 4 billion lives. And when the humans tried to thank her, tried to pay her, she simply smiled and said, "One day, you will help someone else. That will be enough." The galaxy forgot this story. The Valorians never spoke of it, too humble to remind others of their kindness. But humans remembered. They always remembered. Yuna walked to the window and looked up at the stars she could not see in the daylight. Somewhere out there, the children of those kind Valorians were dying. The descendants of the doctor who saved humanity were being murdered while the galaxy watched and did nothing. Her communication device buzzed. Ambassador Cho Mira's face appeared on the screen. Mira looked tired. She had spent the last week begging the consortium to help the Valorians. Her voice was rough from speaking, from pleading, from arguments that fell on deaf ears. They voted no, Mira said. The High Arbiter said intervention would be too costly. He said the Valorians have nothing to offer the consortium. Nothing to offer, Yuna repeated. The words tasted bitter in her mouth. I reminded them of the plague. I told them what the Valorians did for us. Mira's eyes were wet with tears. She refused to let fall. Thiessen laughed at me. He called it sentimental irrelevance. Yuna was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked the question that would change everything. What does Earth say? Mira's expression shifted. Something hard appeared in her eyes, something old and fierce. The United Government voted this morning. Every nation. Every representative. The vote was unanimous, and we go to war. The words hung in the air between them. War. Humanity had not fought a war against another species in their entire history among the stars. They were considered too weak, too primitive. Their fleet was small. Their technology was generations behind the great powers. But Mira was smiling now, a strange and terrible smile. The Council thinks we're fools. They think we'll throw ourselves against the Krath and die. Let them think that, Yuna said. 3 days later, Yuna stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Soul's Promise. Around her, the human fleet gathered in formation. 200 ships, painted in the colors of Earth. They were small compared to the massive vessels of other species. They looked fragile, almost delicate. Captain Lee Doan stood beside her. He was young, only 32, with the eager energy of someone who had never known true hardship. But he was smart, and he was loyal, and he believed in the mission with all his heart. Admiral, he said, the fleet is ready. All ships report green across the board. Yuna nodded. She activated the fleet-wide communication channel. Her voice would reach every ship, every soldier, every pilot who had volunteered for this mission. 300 years ago, she began, humanity was dying. We begged the galaxy for help, and the galaxy turned away. We were not important enough to save. She paused, letting the words sink in. But one species answered. The Valorians sent a ship when sending that ship could have meant war with their own government. They gave us the cure when giving meant sacrifice. They saved 4 billion of our people and asked for nothing in return. On every ship, men and women listened. Some were old enough to have heard the stories from their grandparents. Some were young and learning this history for the first time. But all of them felt something stir in their chests, something ancient and powerful. Today, the Valorians face extinction. The Krath Dominion murders their children while the galaxy watches. The consortium has decided they are not worth saving. Yuna's voice grew harder, sharper. They have forgotten what the Valorians did. They have forgotten because they do not understand what it means to remember. But we remember. We have remembered for 300 years. And today, we repay our debt. She looked out at the stars, at the distant points of light that held both hope and death. The galaxy thinks we are weak. They think we are foolish. Let them think what they want. We know who we are. We are human. We do not forget those who helped us. And we do not abandon those who saved us. She straightened her shoulders and gave the order that would shake the galaxy. All ships, engage jump drives. We go to war. The fleet vanished in flashes of light, leaving behind a silent Earth and a watching galaxy that had no idea what was coming. They thought they knew humanity. They were wrong. They had never seen humans fight for something they loved. They were about to learn the Great Hall of the Galactic Consortium had stood for 10,000 years. Its walls held the flags of 100 species, each one representing millions of years of civilization. At the center sat the High Council, 12 beings who controlled the fate of the galaxy. High Arbiter Thesan was the oldest among them. His species lived for thousands of years, and he had seen empires rise and fall like waves on a shore. He sat on his throne of living crystal and watched the reports of human fleet movements with something close to amusement. They actually went, said one of the counselors, a being made of shifting light. The humans actually declared war on the Krath Dominion. Thesan made a sound that his species used for laughter. It was cold, like ice cracking. Let them go. It will be educational. The chamber filled with similar sounds from other counselors. They found this very funny. Humans, with their tiny ships and their short lives and their strange emotions, going to fight the Krath, it was like watching an insect challenge a mountain. Should we stop them? Asked another counselor. They are still members of the consortium. Why would we? Thesan replied. They chose this foolishness. When they fail, perhaps they will finally learn their place in the galaxy. And if they all die, well, we lose very little. Across the galaxy, other species watched the news with the same amusement. On the trading stations and colony worlds, betting pools opened. Would the humans last 1 week or 2? Would any of them survive? The odds against humanity were astronomical. On the network channels that connected billions of beings, humans became the subject of jokes. They were called detabsessed primitives and emotional failures. One popular comedian created a show about a human ship trying to fight a Krath destroyer. It ended with the human ship exploding in seconds. The audience found it hilarious. Back on Earth, Dr. Han Sujin watched these broadcasts in her underground office. She was the chief military strategist for the human fleet, a woman who had spent 40 years studying war. Not human war, but galactic war. She had read every record of every battle fought between the stars for the last 1,000,000 years. She was not laughing. Commander Bijiwan sat across from her, his scarred face serious. He had fought in the border conflicts against pirates and raiders, small battles that the galaxy never noticed. He knew what humans could do when they needed to survive. They think we're children, Sujin said, turning off the broadcast. They think we've been sleeping for 300 years, haven't we? Guan asked. Sujin smiled. It was not a kind smile. We've been learning. She pulled up a holographic display. It showed the military capabilities of the Krath Dominion. Massive ships, powerful weapons, billions of soldiers. They had conquered 12 species in the last 500 years. Not one of those species still existed. Then she pulled up another display. This one showed human development over the same time period. Ships that looked small and primitive on the outside. Weapons that seemed generations behind. Look closer, she said. G1 leaned forward. And then he understood. The human ships were not primitive at all. They were designed to look primitive. Inside, they held technology that the consortium had banned centuries ago. Weapons too cruel for civilized warfare. Engines too dangerous for safe travel. Systems that required human instincts to operate, seize. Tems that no other species could use. We never trusted the peace, Sujin explained. Every human government for 300 years has been preparing for this day. The day we might have to fight alone. Why? Because we know our history. We know what happens to weak species in a hostile universe. We smile, and we trade, and we act harmless. But we never stopped being what we were before we reached the stars. This one contains psychological profiles of human soldiers compared to soldiers of other species. The differences were striking. Humans could continue fighting with wounds that would make other species surrender. Humans could operate for days without sleep. Humans could make decisions in microseconds that other species needed minutes to process. And there was something else. Something the galaxy had never understood. Other species fight to win, Sujin said. They calculate the odds. If victory is impossible, they surrender. It is logical, and us. We fight anyway, even when we know we will lose. Even when there is no hope. We have a word for this that does not translate well into Galactic Common. We call it spite. In the Krath Dominion, the warlords received word of the approaching human fleet. They gathered in their war chambers and studied the reports. 200 human ships against their empire of thousands. The humans had no allies. They had no support from the consortium. Supreme Warlord Krethax looked at the images of human vessels and felt nothing but contempt. His people had crushed species 10 times as powerful. They had burned worlds that had stood for millions of years. These small, ugly ships were not worth his attention. Send one battle group, he ordered. Destroy them. Record everything. I want the galaxy to see what happens to fools. A fleet of 50 Krath warships departed to meet the humans. Each ship was 5 times the size of the largest human vessel. Each carried weapons that could crack a planet. The Krath soldiers aboard laughed and drank and talked. It's about how quickly the battle would end. They did not notice the strange readings on their sensors. They did not wonder why some human ships seemed to flicker and disappear. They did not ask why the humans were not running. On the bridge of the Soul's Promise, Admiral Park Yuna received the report of the approaching Krath fleet. 50 ships. Powerful ships. Ships that should terrify her. She felt no fear. She felt something else, something that burned in her chest like fire. The Krath have sent their welcome party, she announced to her bridge crew. 50 ships. Captain Lee Do-on looked at the tactical display. They're not taking us seriously. No, Yuna agreed. They are not. That seems like a mistake. Yuna nodded slowly. Yes, it does. She opened a channel to the fleet. All ships. This is Admiral Park. The Krath think this will be easy. They think we are weak. They think we will break. Her voice hardened like steel. Show them what humans do when someone threatens those we love. Show them why our ancestors conquered our world. Show them the fire that burns in our blood. She gave the signal. All ships, attack formation. Weapons free. The human fleet moved, and the galaxy, watching from far away, stopped laughing. The skies above the Sara burned orange and red. The Valorian colony world had been beautiful once, covered in vast oceans and floating cities. Now smoke rose from 100 fires. The Krath had been bombing for 3 days. 200,000 Valorians huddled in underground shelters, waiting to die. Elder Eulith was 90 years old. She sat in the darkness with her people, and listened to the explosions above. Her grandmother had been a doctor, a woman named after an ancient hero. That grandmother had once told her stories about a strange pink species called humans, soft creatures with short lives who cried when they were sad and laughed when they were happy, weak beings who needed help to survive a simple plague. Eulith wondered if any humans remembered her grandmother. She doubted it. The galaxy forgot kindness quickly. The ground shook. Another bomb, children cried. Parents held them close. This was how it would end. The Valorians had no fleet, no weapons. They were a peaceful people who had never hurt anyone, and they would die because the galaxy did not care. Then the explosion stopped. Eulith lifted her head. The silence was strange, almost frightening. For 3 days, the bombs had never stopped. Now there was nothing but quiet. A young Valorian ran into the shelter, his blue skin pale with shock. Elder, ships. There are ships fighting the Krath. What ships? Eulith asked. The consortium refused to help us. Not consortium ships. The young one's voice trembled. They say they are human. In space above the Sara, Lieutenant Kong Hanyul pushed her fighter through a storm of weapons fire. Her call sign was Ghost, earned because she could fly through spaces that seemed impossible. Today, she was proving why. The Krath warships were huge, but they were also slow and predictable. They fought the way they had always fought, the way that had worked against 12 other species. Form a line. Fire everything. Overwhelm the enemy with pure power. But Hanol did not fight in lines. She dove between Krath ships, so close that their weapons could not track her without hitting each other. She fired at engines, at sensor arrays, at the small weak points that no other species had bothered to find. Ghost, you're too deep. Her wingman shouted over the radio. Pull back. Can't, she replied. I see the flagship. The Krath commander's ship was at the center of their formation. It was massive, bristling with weapons. If she could damage it, the whole fleet would be confused. Krath military structure depended on orders from above. Without their commander, they would not know what to do. Hanyul dove toward the flagship. Weapons fire surrounded her, so thick that space itself seemed to burn. A normal pilot would have retreated. A logical pilot would have calculated the odds and given up. Hanyul was neither normal nor logical. She was human. Her ship took a hit. Alarms screamed. She ignored them. Another hit. Her shields failed. She kept flying. The flagship grew larger in her view, its command bridge visible through the chaos of battle. She fired everything she had. The command bridge exploded. The Krath flagship lurched sideways, blind and deaf. Throughout the enemy fleet, ships stopped firing as they waited for orders that would never come. Hanyul's ship was falling apart around her. She managed one last transmission before her ejection system activated. Target destroyed. I'm going out. She ejected into the void of space, her small survival pod carrying her away from the battle. She would float for hours before a rescue ship found her. But she was alive, and the Krath fleet was in chaos. On the surface of the Sara, Sergeant O'Tayson hit the ground hard. His drop pod cracked open, and he rolled out, rifle already in his hands. Around him, his squad was landing, each soldier hitting the dirt and moving immediately. The Krath ground forces had taken the capital city. They were burning it, killing any Valorians they found. Tayson's mission was simple. Stop them. Save as many civilians as possible. He had 12 soldiers against thousands of Krath. The odds were ridiculous. Tayson smiled. The Krath were strong. They were big. They were armored. But they had never fought humans before. They did not know about the 50,000 years of warfare that had shaped humanity. They did not know about the endless conflicts that had taught humans how to kill in 1,000 different ways. And they did not know that humans could hate. Tayson saw a group of Krath soldiers dragging Valorian children toward a transport. Something cold and dark rose in his chest. It was the same feeling his ancestors had felt when they defended their homes, their families, their people. It was the feeling that had made humans the dominant species on a dangerous world. Weapons free, he said quietly. No mercy. His squad moved like shadows. They used buildings for cover, striking from angles the Krath never expected. They fought dirty, the way humans had always fought. Knives when guns were empty. Hands when knives were lost. Teeth when hands were pinned. The Krath could not understand it. Every other species they had conquered fought fairly, fought cleanly. These humans fought like animals. They kept coming even when wounded. They attacked even when surrounded. They died killing. Tayson took 3 bullets reaching the children. He killed the Krath holding them with his bare hands. Then he stood over the terrified young Valorians, bleeding from wounds that should have dropped him, and faced the next wave of enemies. Get behind me, he said to the children. His voice was calm, almost gentle. I will protect you, a Krath soldier charged him. Tayson broke its neck. Another came. He shot it twice. A third tried to flank him. One of his squad members appeared from nowhere and put a knife in its throat. The Krath stopped coming. They stared at these small, soft creatures who refused to die, who kept fighting beyond all reason. For the first time in their history as conquerors, they felt something unfamiliar. They felt afraid. In her shelter, Elder Eulith heard the sounds of battle growing closer. Then she heard something strange. A voice speaking in accented Valorian. Survivors? Is anyone down there? A human appeared at the shelter entrance. She was young, with dark hair tied back and blood on her uniform. A medic, judging by the symbols on her shoulder. She looked exhausted and hurt, but she was smiling. I am here to help, the medic said. My name is Kim Yejan. We have ships in orbit. We are going to get you out. Eulith moved toward her, her old body slow, but her heart suddenly light. Why? She asked. Why did humans come? The consortium abandoned us. Yeje knelt, so she was at eye level with the elderly Valorian. 300 years ago, a Valorian doctor saved my species from extinction. She asked for nothing in return. The medic took Eulith's hand gently. We remember. We always remember. Eulith began to cry. She had not cried in 50 years, but now tears ran down her blue face. That doctor was my grandmother. Yagan's eyes widened. Then she pulled the old woman into a gentle hug. Then your grandmother's debt is paid, and our debt to you begins. Above them, the Krath fleet broke and ran. For the first time in their history, they retreated from a battle. The message they sent to their dominion was filled with fear. These are not like the others. These things do not stop. They do not surrender. They do not fear death. Do not underestimate them. Do not. The galaxy received this message and fell silent. The jokes stopped. The betting pools closed. Something had changed, something important. Humanity had shown its true face. And the galaxy was beginning to understand what that meant. The emergency session of the Galactic Consortium began in chaos. Representatives from 100 species shouted over each other, demanding answers, demanding explanations. The great hall that had stood in silence for centuries now echoed with fear and confusion. High Arbiter Thiessen watched the recordings from the Sara for the 5th time. His ancient eyes could not believe what they showed. The Krath fleet broken. The Krath ground forces defeated. All by humans. The species he had dismissed as emotional primitives. How? Demanded a counselor from the trading guilds. Our intelligence said humans had primitive technology. Basic weapons. No military experience. Thiessen had no answer. He had believed the same things. Everyone had believed them. Humans were weak. Humans were soft. Humans were nothing. The recordings showed something very different. Observer. Valeth had been sent to document the human campaign. His species was neutral, dedicated only to recording history. He had expected to document a quick human defeat. Instead, he had witnessed something that would change galactic history. His report played on the great screen of the council chamber. I have watched many wars, Valeth said in the recording. His voice was steady, but there was something new in it. Respect, perhaps, or fear. I have seen powerful species conquer and destroy, but I have never seen anything like humans. The recording showed human ships in battle. They moved in patterns that seemed random, chaotic, but Vaulat had analyzed them and found something terrifying. Every movement had purpose. Every seeming mistake was actually a trap. Humans did not fight the way other species fought. They fought the way predators hunt. Other species build their military tactics around strengths, Vaulat continued. They fight in ways that maximize their advantages. Humans do not do this. Humans build tactics around survival. They assume they will be outnumbered. They assume they will be outgunned. They plan for the worst and prepare for disaster. Intelligence Director Shin Yanji watched the Council's reaction from Earth. She sat in her underground command center, surrounded by screens showing data from across the galaxy. She had spent 30 years building humanity's secret military. Now the galaxy was learning that secret. "They're scared," said her assistant, a young man named Yoon Ji-hoon. "I've never seen the consortium scared before." "They should be scared," Yeonji replied. "They created this situation. They left us alone for 300 years, treated us like children. They never bothered to watch what we were doing." On the council floor, Valith's report continued. Human soldiers do not surrender when logic says they should. They continue fighting in situations that would make any other species retreat. I asked a human commander about this. She said something I did not understand at first. The recording showed a human officer, her face tired but determined. "We call it spite," she said. "When everything is lost, when there is no hope, we fight anyway. Because giving up is worse than dying. Because we would rather burn than bend." Sin turned off the recording. His ancient face was troubled in a way the council had never seen. "What are they?" he asked quietly. "What have we been ignoring?" Across the galaxy, other species asked the same question. They searched their records looking for information about humans they had missed. What they found disturbed them. Humans had fought wars among themselves for their entire history. Not small conflicts, but massive wars that killed millions. They had developed weapons capable of destroying their own planet, and they had chosen not to use them. They had come to the edge of extinction multiple times. Every time they had survived, they were a species that had been shaped by violence. Every generation had known war. Every family had stories of ancestors who had fought and died. This was not something the galaxy understood. Most species reached the stars during periods of peace. Humans had reached the stars because reaching the stars might help them win their next war. In her command center, Yeonji received a new report. The Krath Dominion was mobilizing its main fleet. 1,000 warships were gathering for a massive assault. Their target was the Human Expeditionary Force. "Supreme Warlord Krathax is coming personally," Ji-hoon said. "He wants to destroy us himself." Yoonji smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Good. Let him come. Director, we have 300 ships. They will have 1,000. I know, those odds are exactly what we prepared for." Admiral Park Yuna received the same intelligence on the bridge of the Soul's Promise. Her fleet had grown slightly since the Sara. Ships from other species had arrived, volunteers who remembered old debts or simply wanted to stand against tyranny. There were now 350 ships under her command, against 1,000. Krath warships Captain Lee Doan looked at the numbers, and then at his admiral. "This will be the largest battle in human history," Yuna agreed. "We're outnumbered 3-1. We've been outnumbered before. At Thermopylae. At Rorke's Drift. At Leningrad." She touched the pendant at her throat, the one her grandmother had given her. "Humans are always outnumbered. That's when we fight hardest." Strange things began happening across the galaxy. Ships arrived at the human fleet from species that had not been asked to help. They were small groups, volunteers who came on their own. A dozen fighters from a species the humans had traded with fairly. A medical ship from a world where humans had once shared technology without asking for payment. A cargo vessel full of supplies from a colony that remembered human kindness during a famine. The numbers were small. The gesture was enormous. Ambassador Cho Mira contacted Earth from the consortium station. Her face showed exhaustion, but also something like hope. "Something is changing," she said. "I'm getting messages from representatives of species we've never spoken to. They're watching what we're doing. They're asking why." What do you tell them? Asked the Earth Council leader. I tell them the truth. We're repaying a debt. We're helping those who helped us. And what do they say? Mira paused. They say they've never seen a species do this before. Fight for another species with no benefit to themselves. They don't understand it, but they're watching. And some of them are starting to hope that maybe the galaxy doesn't have to be the way it's always been. On the Soul's promise, Yuna assembled her senior officers for the final briefing before battle. The tactical display showed the approaching Krath Armada. 1,000 ships, spreading across space like a wave of death. They think this will end us, Yuna said. They think they can crush us with numbers. She looked at each of her officers. These were humans who had volunteered to die far from home, fighting for a species they had never met. They were the best of humanity. They don't understand what they're facing, she continued. They've conquered species that fight logically, that surrender when the odds are against them. They've never faced humans. She activated a new display. It showed human history. Wars that had shaped nations. Battles where outnumbered forces had held against impossible odds. Moments where individual humans had changed history through sheer refusal to give up. This is who we are. This is what our ancestors gave us. Not just technology or tactics. They gave us something the galaxy doesn't have. The knowledge that we can survive anything. The certainty that we will never, ever give up. She stood straight and looked out at the stars. Tomorrow, we face the largest fleet the Krath have ever assembled. Tomorrow, we show the galaxy what humanity truly is. Tomorrow, we make our ancestors proud. Her officers saluted. In their eyes burned a fire that no alien species could understand. The fire that had driven humans from caves to the stars. The fire that made them dangerous beyond measure. The galaxy was about to see that. Fire unleashed. The Battle of Valoria Prime began at dawn, though in space there was no true dawn. The human fleet hung in the void between the Krath Armada and the Valorian homeworld. Behind them, 1 billion Valorians waited in fear. Ahead of them, 1,000 enemy warships spread across the stars like a river of death. Admiral Park Yuna stood on the bridge of the Soul's Promise and felt strangely calm. She had prepared for this moment her entire life. Every human had prepared for this moment, whether they knew it or not. Every war in there. History, every battle, every sacrifice had led to this. All ships report ready, said her communications officer. The fleet awaits your orders. Yuna looked at the tactical display. 350 ships against 1,000. The math was simple. The math said they would lose, but humans had never been good at listening to math. Open a channel to the Krath's flagship, she ordered. The face of Supreme Warlord Krathax appeared on screen. He was massive, covered in ceremonial armor that showed his countless victories. He looked at Yuna the way a predator looks at prey. Human, he said. You have killed many of my warriors. For this, I will destroy your species entirely. Your worlds will burn. Your people will beg for death. Yuna did not react to his threats. Her face remained calm, almost serene. You have threatened our friends. You have killed innocents. For this we have come. Krathax laughed. You came to die. Look at my fleet. You cannot win. I know, Yuna said simply. We came anyway. The warlord's laughter faded. Something in Yuna's voice disturbed him. She was not afraid. She was not desperate. She was something he had never encountered before. She was certain. All ships, Yuna said, attack. The human fleet moved forward. They did not form defensive lines. They did not try to protect themselves. They dove directly into the Krath formation, ship choosing targets and attacking with a fury that shocked the enemy. Captain Lee Doan commanded the battleship Ancient Spirit. His ship was smaller than any Krath vessel, but he drove it into the heart of their fleet. His weapons fired continuously, striking at engines and command centers. Krath ships exploded around him. Captain, we're taking heavy damage. His first officer shouted. Keep firing, Doan replied. Every second we fight, more Valorians survive. The battle was chaos. Human ships wove through Krath formations. too fast and unpredictable to target easily. They used tactics no other species had ever seen, tactics developed over millennia of human warfare. They sacrificed themselves without hesitation to protect each other. Ambassador Cho Mira watched from Earth, surrounded by the leaders of human civilization. The tactical data streamed across her screens, showing the terrible toll of the battle. Human ships dying. Human lives ending, but also Krath ships dying. Far more Krath ships than anyone had expected. They're actually winning, someone whispered in disbelief. No, Myra said quietly. They're buying time. Every minute the Valorians have is a minute they use to evacuate civilians. That's what matters to them. On the battlefield, Lieutenant Kong Hanyul flew her fighter through the wreckage of destroyed ships. She had already lost count of how many enemy vessels she had helped destroy. Her squadron was down to 4 pilots. They kept fighting. Ghost time hit. One of her wingmen called out. His ship was spinning. Engines dead. Hanyul dove toward him, using her ship to shield his from incoming fire. Eject. I'll cover you. The pilot ejected. Hanyul stayed between him and the Krath fighters until a rescue shuttle could reach him. She took 17 hits protecting one man. When he was safe, she turned back to the battle. Supreme Warlord Krathax watched his tactical display with growing anger. His fleet was taking losses that should have been impossible. These humans were not fighting like warriors. They were fighting like something else. Something he had no word for. They were fighting like family protecting family. Captain Lee Doan's ship was dying. The Incheon Spirit had taken too much damage. Her weapons were offline. Her engines were failing. But she was positioned between a Krath dreadnought and a convoy of Valorian refugee ships. Sir, we can't hold them, his first officer said. We need to retreat. We looked at the refugee convoy. 10,000 civilians, children, elderly, families, trying to escape the death of their world? No, he said. Sir. Amos at the dreadnought. All power to engines, his crew understood. Some wept, some prayed, but none questioned the order. Doan opened a channel to his fleet. This is Captain Lee Doan of the Incheon Spirit. It has been an honor serving with you. Tell them it was worth it. His ship surged forward, a burning arrow aimed at the heart of the enemy dreadnought. The Krath commander tried to turn, tried to escape, but it was too late. The Incheon Spirit struck the dreadnought at full speed. Both ships died in a fireball that lit up the void. 10,000 Valorian refugees escaped to safety through the gap. Across the battlefield, humans saw, and something changed. They had been fighting hard. Now they fought harder. Every pilot pushed deeper into the enemy formation. Every ship took risks that should have been suicidal. They fought with a fury that went beyond reason, beyond survival. They fought to honor the captain who had given everything. Krathax watched his fleet crumble. He could not understand it. His ships outnumbered the humans 3-1. By every calculation, he should be winning. But humans did not obey calculations. They did not break when they should break. They did not run when they should run. And every time one of them died, the others fought even harder. Retreat, he finally ordered, his voice hollow with shock. All ships retreat. His commanders could not believe it. Warlord, we still have numerical advantage. Look at them, Krathax said. Look at what they become when they lose their people. Every death makes them stronger. Every loss feeds their rage. We cannot kill them fast enough. We cannot break their spirit. He gave the order again, and this time his fleet obeyed. The mighty Krath Armada, conquerors of 12 species, turned and fled from the humans. The Battle of Valoria Prime was over. Humanity had won. Admiral Yuna stood on her damaged bridge and watched the Krath retreat. She had lost 60 ships. 2,000 humans had died. But the Valorians were safe. The Krath Dominion was broken. She thought of Captain Doan, of all the soldiers who had given their lives, of the debt they had repaid with their blood. Ambassador Chomira appeared on screen. Behind her, the leaders of Earth were watching, many with tears in their eyes. The consortium wants to talk, Mira said. They want to negotiate terms for the Krath's surrender. They're finally taking us seriously. Una nodded slowly. Tell them our terms. The Krath release all conquered species. They pay reparations to the Valorians. They never threaten another world. They'll accept. After what they just witnessed, they'll accept anything. Una closed her eyes. Then the debt is paid. 6 months later, a memorial was built on Valoria Prime. It stood at the center of the capital, great column of crystal and stone. Carved into its surface were the names of every human who had died defending the Valorians. At the top stood a statue of Captain Lee Doan. Looking toward the stars he had died to protect, Elder Eulith attended the dedication ceremony. She was older now, moving slowly, but her eyes were bright. She stood before the memorial and spoke words that would be remembered for generations. 300 years ago, my grandmother saved a species she had never met. She asked for nothing in return. She told me once that kindness was its own reward, that helping others was what gave life meaning. She touched the cold stone of the memorial. I understand now what she meant. The humans came because we came first. They died because we helped them live. This is not debt. This is not obligation. This is what the galaxy should be. Species helping species. Lives honoring lives. She looked up at the statue of Doan. You came for us when no one else would. You fought for us when the galaxy turned away. You died for strangers who could never repay you. Her voice broke, but she continued. The Valorians will never forget. For as long as our species exists, we will remember. And if humanity ever needs us, we will come. We will come. Across the galaxy, everything had changed. The species that had mocked humanity now spoke of them with respect. The consortium that had ignored them now sought their counsel. But more than that, something fundamental had shifted in how the galaxy understood itself. One species had shown that power was not the only thing that mattered, that kindness was not weakness, that remembering those who helped you was not foolishness, but wisdom. Humans had taught the galaxy something it had forgotten, and the galaxy would never be the same. On Earth, Admiral Park Una retired from the fleet. She returned to Sol, to the office where she had first received the message about the Valorians. She stood at the window and watched the sunrise. The same sunrise she had watched the day everything began. She touched the pendant at her throat, the one her grandmother had given her, made of metal from a Valorian world. We remembered, she whispered to the sky. We always remember. Somewhere among the stars, she knew, the captain and all the others who had died were at peace. They had done what humans had always done. They had protected those who could not protect themselves. They had kept faith with those who had shown them kindness. The debt was paid. But the lesson would last forever. Humanity had shown the galaxy what it meant to be truly strong. And strength, they had proven, was not about conquest or power. It was about love.